Hello, you wretched ingrates. Welcome back to my world of stuff. Today, a little bit late to the party, I appreciate that, but I think it's time that we spoke about all the new things coming from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Walk this way. Hello, how do? This is me. Yo, hope you're all well, hope you're all feeling fine and dandy as we're heading out of lockdown. We're out of lockdown, we're heading back to the reopening of things. Cinemas and stuff open the week Monday as I'm recording this, which I can't wait. I'm planning to see Kong vs Godzilla. Even though I've seen it already on the cinema, I want to see it on a big, loud cinema screen with big, loud stereo effects and all that sort of crap, whatever they call it in the cinemas. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Yeah, it's a nice feeling at the moment. Life is starting to return to normal, whatever that is. I went to the gym today, my first time back to the gym. Only for that, it's a bit rude. How do you think I keep this racing snake figure? Yeah, I haven't been to the gym since December, and I was a bit apprehensive about going because my exercise regime, which had been reduced to just walks now and again, a couple of weeks ago, I can't be bothered. So I went toddling down to the gym today because I've got a session with my personal trainer tomorrow. And will you stop that? What's funny about that? Grow up. Honestly, some people. Anyway, I'm seeing my personal trainer tomorrow, and I thought I would get back to the gym today and do a little bit of exercise. I spent about 40 minutes in the gym running and not running, no, I don't run anymore, my knees won't allow that, but just doing stuff in the gym, bit of cardiovascular and stuff just to sort of limber up my stiff legs. Then a nice swim. It was such a relief and such a pleasure just to slip into the swimming pool and do a few lengths. It's just nice and refreshing to get a bit of exercise, you know. You've got to keep moving when you get older, and I'm not as young as I was. And then sat outside Costa with a book and a coffee, and it just felt like normal, and that was very nice. Anyway, you don't want to hear about me jabbering on about my social life, do you? If you do, I could start up another channel, and maybe not, this one's hard enough. Anyway, what I wanted to do is have a little chat about the MCU. Because on Monday there was a trailer dropped. You will all have seen it by now. Everybody else has reacted to it and commented on it, but it's fairly typical of my world of stuff. I'm doing it a few days later because I've let it all settle. I've watched some of the YouTube commentators getting hold of the wrong end of the stick, getting all worked up about certain things that they perceive to be happening in the MCU and in the world generally. And I just thought I would sit back and just run through what we saw in that fabulous trailer and what we got to look forward to. I am an unashamed fan of the MCU. As I've probably mentioned before, I was a big fan of Marvel Comics back in the 70s until the early 80s really, when I lost interest a bit. And it's just been a thrill over the last 10 years to see these characters that I used to love as a kid and I'd sort of forgotten about in a way, brought to life so vividly and with such care and creativity, led by Kevin Feige, who is the president of Marvel Studios, who just makes this thing work like a well-oiled machine, and you see what Marvel does and you realise what a hash DC have made of bringing their properties to life and to the screen by and large, with one or two little exceptions. But with Marvel there's a very noticeable creative curve to everything they've done, the stories they've built, the characters that they've introduced, and the universe that they've created. A lot of people say Marvel films are formulaic. You've seen one, you've seen them all. I don't think that's true, and I think if you look back at what they've done, the way they've created their characters, there's a certain formula, I suppose, to the way the characters begin and their initial adventures. But I think once you go beyond that, I think that they've really developed a style of their own. And I think, especially now we're moving to phase 4 of the MCU, I think we're going to see things take on a different look and a different aspect, because we've got a lot of new characters coming in and some spins on familiar characters. I think they've got a nice balance now of some returning classic characters and some new characters that we haven't met before, who might be considered to be Marvel going out on a limb a little bit. But if you think that in the past they brought us the Guardians of the Galaxy and AntMan, you can't imagine less high profile characters, but they've made huge hits of them and great cultural icons of them in a way. So I'm very confident that Marvel will do the right thing in bringing them to the screen. The issue is whether the public will accept them, the public will embrace them. I was talking about this with a friend of mine recently. There's got to be a ceiling at some point where this levels out and the public suddenly think, actually, we're a bit bored with superheroes. No matter how good the films may be, there's going to be a point at which one of them underperforms and the wheel starts to come off. I hope that doesn't happen soon. I think that at the moment we may be suffering for a little bit of Marvel deprivation, because of course last year we didn't have any new films because of COVID. We've had a couple of TV series this year which have whetted our appetites. But this new trailer which came out on Monday, thinking about it, when it came on, I heard there was a trailer and I looked at it on YouTube, and it started off and I thought, it's just some fan thing, because obviously you've seen the trailer by now, and it's a compilation of clips of all the old Marvel films so far, with a very poignant voiceover from Mr. Stan Lee himself, which I found particularly poignant, because I just finished last week reading a really good book, which I think I might have mentioned on a previous video, called Stan Lee, How Marvel Changed the World. I just finished reading this last week. It's a great book. It's a really good, readable story of Stan's life and the history of Marvel. And having just read that, Stan Lee was he's in the forefront of my mind at the moment, because I've been reading about his life and his career and his achievements. So to hear his voice at the beginning of this trailer was quite makes you stop and think for a bit. And it's a quote we've heard before about him talking about this family thing with Marvel, about how the guy across the road's your brother, the woman over there is your sister, and we all love stories. And at first, for the first minute or so, I thought, this is just a fan thing, it's not a proper trailer. But then I could see that it was, when we had some footage from upcoming films and some very tantalising teasers of what's to come in the next year and a half, couple of years. And then thinking about the trailer again, and I've watched it a few times, it wasn't just a trailer for Marvel on what they're doing. It was a clarion call to all of us to get back to the cinema, to see films where they're supposed to be seen, in the cinema. Now, during pandemic, we've all sat down and we watched films, even big films that have come out, big spectacular films. We've watched them on our TVs, and no matter how big our TVs are, my TV's 50 inches, something like that. And no matter how big your sound system is, and I've just got a sound bar because I don't really like having the TV too loud indoors. There's something about, so I haven't got big subwoofers and massive speakers, and it's just a sound bar. That's fine for me. But no matter what system you've got and what home cinema unit you've got, it doesn't and can't replicate the actual experience of being in a cinema and experiencing these films, or any film, with an audience. Now in Britain, of course, we have the problem that audiences aren't particularly well behaved. I don't think that seems to be so much of an issue in America. I think Americans respect the cinema going experience more than we do. Over here, it can be a bit tiresome, because you've got kids misbehaving, people talking, people on their phones, people rustling and chomping, and that does detract from the experience. But I think when you're watching the right film with the right audience, and I think Marvel films are a prime example of that, you get that proper experience, that shared experience of people who are all there for the same reason, the same purpose, to enjoy the same experience. And I think that's what this trailer was all about, really. Cinemas are reopening in America, the box office takings are slowly climbing, and they're opening over here again soon. And I think it was a beautifully timed trailer, just to remind everybody who might have thought, what's the point, I'll watch these things at home. No, cinema is the place to go to see these things. So we had this trailer which took us through the history of Marvel, and quite frankly it sent a shiver up and down your spine, because you got that fantastic Marvel Studios rousing orchestrated theme, which really does, it puts the hairs on the back of my neck and everywhere else on edge, because it just reminds you of the excitement and the adventure of seeing these films. And then we went into clips and reveals of what's coming, and that's what I want to run through and just talk about what we've got coming up. Next we've got coming up, of course, coming up in July, July the 7th, I think it is, the much delayed Black Widow, starring Scarlett Johansson. But of course, before that, we've got Loki on TV on June the 11th. I'm just looking at my phone here with the list. We've got Loki, the TV show, coming on June the 11th, but that not in the trailer, because the trailer was purely focused on cinema, because that's what it was about. We've got Black Widow coming out in July, on July the 7th. Hugely exciting. I mean, it's been delayed. It should have been out a year ago, just over a year ago, and it was put back. Because Marvel, quite rightly, didn't want to release any of their features straight to streaming, because Marvel's films are too big for that. They deserve better than that. So they hung back. And although Black Widow looks great, I'm really looking forward to it. It does feel like an overhang from Phase 3, because we know, spoiler, that Black Widow is dead. So this is takes us back a little bit to, I think, it's pre-blip, which would be quite nice. And it's her having an adventure, back in the early days of the MCU. I believe there's a cameo from Tony Stark, from Robert Downey Jr., which will be very poignant. So I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be a nice little hors d'oeuvre for the feasters to come over the next couple of years. On TV then we've got the What If animated series coming in the summer, but the next film is in September with ShangChi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. ShangChi is a character I remember from the 70s. He was a master of Kung Fu. He was called The Hands of Shang-Chi, Master of Kung Fu. And he was created in the wake of the Kung Fu film boom of the 70s, with the success of the late Bruce Lee, which really exploded this sort of Kung Fu phenomenon. And that character, and the less successful Iron Fist, of course, we've seen him brought to life not hugely successfully on the Netflix shows. But Shang-Chi it's not a character I was sort of desperate to see on the screen, because he's not a superhero as such. He's just a master of Kung Fu. And I don't know if they've engineered something else into the story for the film, but from the trailers, we've had a trailer, and there was a couple of new clips in this trailer, and it looks exciting. It looks action-packed, and it looks like another great adventure romp. I understand, and I don't remember, because I am at some point going to do a Marvel rewatch, going back to all the beginning of the films and watching them all. Apparently the Ten Rings were referenced as far ago as the very first Iron Man, because they have a place in Marvel chronology. And as I've probably said before, I love Marvel films, but I'm not a Marvel expert. Read the comics, and I'm rereading some of the comics now, but I don't have the intricate detail of the ins and outs and the history of the characters. But I'm certainly looking forward to seeing Shang-Chi. It'll be nice to see a new character brought to the screen, ushering in the real beginning of Phase 4. Then we have I think it's in November, we have November the 5th, there'll be fireworks that day, I'm telling you. Sorry. We've got the Eternals. Now again, the Eternals are characters I'm not hugely familiar with. I know they were created by Jack Kirby, and although I'm sure I read the comics back in the 70s, but nothing has stuck in my head. I know they're sort of gods who came to Earth millennia ago to help sort of encourage the progress of humanity, if you like, and they were sort of gods hiding in plain sight, and I think that they're here now to sort of realign the destiny of mankind, and I think they're sort of forced out of hiding. I know little of it. I did find often that Jack Kirby's projects that he did solo, there were characters like Mr. Miracle and so on. They were the artwork was fantastic, of course, terrific artwork, but the stories were a bit sort of mechanical and not hugely inclusive. But I'm looking forward to the Eternals. Of course, it stars Angelina Jolie and Richard Madden, amongst others. Gemma Chan, I believe, is one of the lead characters. But as I say, I'm not hugely familiar with those characters, so forgive me if I don't go into the details of it. And excitingly, in this new trailer from Marvel, we saw our first glimpses of some scenes from that film, which, of course, as we know, is directed by... I'm just trying to look at the name of the director. Chloe Zhao, who's recently just last week won the Oscar for Nomadland, starring Frances McDormand, which I've not seen. I'm sort of umming and ahhing about it, because I do like to see the Oscar winners, but it isn't one that sort of sings to me as you must see this. But I mean, she's a canny choice of director, because it's almost as if Marvel knew she was going to make waves just months before this film's released, and even though people might be a bit wary of the film, her being attached to it will make people curious. That's the genius of Marvel. They seem to think one step ahead of the industry and the audience. And I think that The Eternals is going to be a visual treat. Now, I've heard reports that it's the best film Marvel have ever made, which is a bold statement. But I'm intrigued to see what goes on, basically, because I don't have that in-depth knowledge of the characters. But again, it's Marvel introducing new characters into the universe, which has got to be a good thing to stop the whole thing going stale. Much as we enjoy the Avengers and with Thor and Iron Man and Spider-Man, it is nice to, blur the edges and look into the darker corners of Marvel and bring these characters to the screen. So The Eternals is going to be fun. Then we've got, sometime later in the year, we've got the Hawkeye TV series starring Jeremy Renner. Again, these things that aren't referenced in this trailer, but they're all part of Phase 4 now. Phase 4 is now encompassing television as well. And it's quite thrilling for me as an ageing fanboy to know that all year round there's going to be a diet of Marvel product. And the question is, are Marvel going to be able to keep up the quality of that product? Well, that remains to be seen. I've been very pleased with WandaVision and the Falcon and Winter Soldier that we've had this year, but it's the films that really matter, because that's where the big stuff happens. And then, of course, in December the 17th, we've got Spider-Man 3, No Way Home. It is interesting how all the three Marvel Spider-Man films have all been Homecoming, Far From Home, and now No Way Home. Not a lot is known about this. A lot has been rumoured. That there's this sort of multiverse crossover. We know that Alfred Molina's Dr. Octopus is back from the Sam Raimi trilogy, and there are rumours that Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire will be back as the earlier film incarnations of Spider-Man. But nothing's been confirmed. That's just hotly rumoured. Andrew Garfield just this week has been reported as denying it and saying, well, no, he hasn't been contacted. He doesn't know anything about it. He said, if I was going to be in it, they would have contacted me by now. He could be lying. But on the basis that we know Dr. Octopus is back, and we know that this story is something to do with the multiverse, which leads on to a later title, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see... clearly Tobey Maguire's going to be back if Dr. Octopus is back. And I don't know how I feel about that, because I think that Tom Holland has established this really nice version of Spider-Man, which I think is the best cinematic Spider-Man we've had. I don't know how I feel about the others being brought back. I just think that perhaps they should re-establish him. What I love Tom Holland. He's got that sort of youthfulness about him, which means he could play the part for years. But I think that what they need to do with him is step him out from the shadow of Tony Stark, because he was sort of his advisor, his father figure in a way, leading him to become the hero rather than the young boy hero, if you like. And I think I'd rather see them go in that direction of him flying solo, if you like, without his mentor behind him. But we'll see. It's Spider-Man, it's Marvel, it's out at Christmas. I can't think of a much better Christmas present, to be honest. Then we also have I think we have a series called Miss Marvel, which is also due end of this year, beginning of next year. Film-wise, the next one we've got then is March the 25th. What's great, of course, again, we've only got 2 or 3 months between a lot of these films, so it almost is like picking up a comic book every couple of months. You've got a new Marvel story coming in the cinema, and that's just... I'm unfeasibly excited about it for a man of my age, I accept that, but I just love these characters, I love this universe. We've got Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Benedict Cumberbatch's second solo flight as the Master of the Mystic Arts. We know that it picks up on threads from WandaVision, because Elizabeth Olsen is on board as the Scarlet Witch, as she is now properly identified as, and we can gather that it carries on from WandaVision. It's got this situation where she's still racked with grief about the death of Vision, but she's got these children now which were created in WandaVision who are in some other place that we saw at the end of WandaVision, and I think that this picks up from those threads that were left hanging in WandaVision. So very excited to see where we go with that. On that particular point, I just wanted to mention that there's been a bit of a furore among certain areas of the fan community this week, because Kevin Feige addressed the rumours that Doctor Strange was going to appear at the end of WandaVision. And I think he made the unfortunately worded comment that I didn't want to have the white guy riding in and showing her how to use her powers. Of course, all the usual, everything's too woke crowd have all jumped in and derided him for saying that. But I think that he's justified in that, because he also mentioned that the point that they've chosen to ignore is that it was Wanda's story. This was WandaVision. And I think he said it would have commoditised her on the series too much if he had come along and saved the day. Now, I don't think it would have been an issue of him saving the day. And I've said it before, it would be nice to see one of the big guns appearing, however briefly, in one of these TV series, because it would bring the universes really closer together. But it would have been nice to see Doctor Strange just appear at the very end. He didn't have to come in and save the day in that final episode of WandaVision, but I think knowing that we're going to have this overlap, I think if you remember the last episode of WandaVision ended up with her in this sort of cabin out in the wilderness, hearing the voices of her children. It would have been nice perhaps if Doctor Strange had just turned up then and offered his help, or excuse me, led in. I mean, I don't know how Multiverse of Madness is going to exactly carry on from WandaVision, but it does, and it would have been a nice stepping stone. It would have been nice to see him, but he didn't necessarily have to come flying in, waving his arms about and saving the day, which I think is what a lot of people sort of thought that was going to happen. But as I say, as usual, the crowd who can't see beyond white faces, straight faces, male faces, just get very worked up when anything outside that box is presented to them, and it's a shame that people are that small-minded. Anyway, we've then got the one that I'm a little bit wary of. This is coming out May the 6th, Thor, Love and Thunder. Now this is another film directed by Taika Waititi. I got his name right this time. And I'm a bit ambivalent about it, because I wasn't a fan of Thor Ragnarok. I didn't like the fact that he'd basically made a comedy. And the issue, I had no issue with having comedy in anything, but I think I've said this about Doctor Who, when Stephen Moffat was always banging on about having jokes and comedy. I think things should be witty rather than funny unless you're doing a comedy. And I don't think Thor necessarily needs to be a comedic character now. In Thor Ragnarok, the issue I had that the humour got very tiresome, and everybody spoke the same way in these glib sort of sassy little comments, and the slapstick humour. I got a bit tired of it. It didn't fit in with, or at the end of the day, Thor is a Norse god. That doesn't mean he has to be pompous, but you have to have a bit of gravitas to him. But unfortunately, I think he's just become a sort of a stoner, surfer dude type bloke. And I understand that from Chris Hemsworth's point of view, that's why he's back to do a fourth film, because he enjoyed making Ragnarok and he enjoyed looking at that side of Thor. So I think I'm sort of two-minded about it. I'm glad we've still got Thor, one of the original Marvel Cinematic Universe characters, still around. But I would like to see him be more Thor and less, swigging a Budweiser and playing video games or whatever, as we saw in Endgame, which was a sort of a hangover from what we saw in Ragnarok. The issues, I think the issues to do with the film, I think we know that Natalie Portman is back playing Jane Foster, and apparently she dons the mantle of Thor at some point. Now again, I believe this comes from the comic books, but that hasn't stopped certain areas of fandom going, oh, it's so woke, it's so woke. Let's see what happens. I'm glad to be seeing Thor again, but I hope the film isn't just a constant barrage of weak sauce gags. I want a bit of more meat to it, because I did feel that although there was action and spectacle in Ragnarok, it was completely undermined and constantly undermined by this monotonous sort of humour. Beyond that, however, the first sort of surprise of the new trailer, of course, was the announcement and the title of the Black Panther sequel in July the 8th next year. This is being released. It's incredible to think that 14 months time we'll be seeing these films. This one hasn't even started being made yet. It's Black Panther Wakanda Forever. Now this is going to be interesting. Now I will say, Black Panther wasn't one of my favourite of the original Marvel films. I understand the importance of the character culturally and in the comic books, but I felt that the film was great fun. But I think at the end it was quite obvious that we had this battle between these two CGI characters who looked a bit too rubber, as if they were having this sort of fight between each other. And the story, it just didn't gel with me. Much as I love the films, some I love, some I like, and I liked Black Panther rather than loved it. Similar with Captain Marvel. Of course, the problem we've got with this film is that sadly we lost Chadwick Boseman, the actor who so charismatically brought T'Challa to life. We were lucky to have him in 4 films, I think. He appeared in Civil War, the two most recent Avengers films and of course Black Panther itself, and his loss was a shock not only to the Marvel Cinematic Universe but of course to the cinematic universe completely, because he was such a good actor, capable of so many great things I think in years to come, but he was taken too soon. It leaves the sequel in a difficult position of course because we've lost him, and I don't really know where they go with that. I mean, Ryan Coogler, who's directing and writing the thing, I believe, apparently has come up with a way that we honour that character and that performance, but apparently Black Panther himself isn't going to be replaced. The title is Wakanda Forever, so it's clearly going to be expanding the world of Wakanda, which is interesting because it's an interesting culture and an interesting part of the MCU. But I think if we don't have a Black Panther of some sort, it's going to be a bit odd, because he is a fairly major Marvel character and you do need him in it somehow. There are some rumours that his sister, I think is played by Letitia Wright in the original, or was it Lupita Nyong'o? This is what I mean, it's not one of my favourite films. That she becomes the new Black Panther. Again, it's like, oh no, a woman Black Panther. But I think you need a Black Panther. I'd rather crassly thought that a way around it, and that might not have honoured Chadwick Boseman too well, is if you started off with Black Panther in his costume having a fight with somebody, a battle, maybe the end of another Black Panther story, and he gets mutilated or scarred, and then he has to be facially reconstructed. You could have a new actor play the part. Now that, I suppose that is a bit crass, but I think it sort of gets around the problem of not having I think rather than not have a Black Panther, it's probably better to lose T'Challa and have a new Black Panther rather than try to replace Chadwick Boseman as the same character. But I suppose that would have been one way around it, but I think it's probably a little bit iffy and a little bit disrespectful perhaps, but it would have been a way to do it if you wanted to keep T'Challa around. But anyway, that's coming out next July. The interesting one then is November of next year, where we have The Marvels. Now this is one which has attracted a lot of interest because of course this is effectively Captain Marvel 2. Again, it's not a film that I love. I've seen it twice and I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's my least favourite of the Marvel films. I just didn't find it particularly interesting. I don't have the issues that many have with Brie Larson. I think I can understand why people have problems with her, because she is a bit sort of standoffish, but a little bit distant. I don't get from her the warmth that you get from some of the other actors who play these parts. And the main issue I think is that Captain Marvel is just so bloody powerful. It's a bit like Superman. You've got somebody who can do all these incredible things. Where's the weakness? Where's the humanity? Because to make those characters interesting, you have to take their powers away from them. You have to compromise their abilities in some way. And I think from what we've seen, I was just watching the end of Endgame just this week after I'd seen this video, and because of that fantastic scene, incidentally, in that preamble to the new material where we had a shot of the footage of people, the audience reaction watching Endgame, and that's what the people roaring at certain points, just thrilling. But I think that we saw in the Endgame that she suddenly arrived, and the Avengers and everybody else were battling Thanos and losing, and she suddenly flies down, destroys the spaceship and turns the tide because she's so powerful. And I don't find characters who are that powerful that interesting, but it is interesting that they've now changed it from Captain Marvel 2 to The Marvels. A lot of people are saying that's sort of a reaction to the fact that Brie Larson herself hasn't gone down that well with the fan audience and the audience, but this is a film that made over $1 billion. I don't really think Marvel are too worried about that. But I know we've got Miss Marvel, as we said, coming up on TV. We've got Monica Rambeau, who we saw in WandaVision, who is now stepping up to the plate as, I believe, a character called Spectrum. I don't know. Again, Miss Marvel, Captain Marvel aren't characters that I'm that familiar with, although I'm aware of them and surely read some of the stuff back in the 70s, but they haven't sort of sunk into my mind in the way that the main characters have. So I think that we're going to have a family of Marvels rather than just Captain Marvel, and you do wonder. I suppose it does come across as a bit of a demotion for Brie Larson, who headlined her own film and now is one of the characters in a second film. So it's an interesting take. I do wonder why they've done it. It'll be interesting to find out the reasons they've done it. But that's coming out in November, and as I say, because I wasn't mad about the first film, I'm not sort of biting my lip waiting for that one. I am, however, very much looking forward to the next one, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, February 17th, 2023. Now, I love the Ant-Man character. I like an underdog, and because the first two Ant-Man films weren't big billion-dollar films, I think the first one took about 550,000 at the box office, the second one 650,000, so they're hit films, but they're not sort of major players. But I think Paul Rudd's performance as Scott Lang and Ant-Man is so affecting, and Evangeline Lilly is great as the Wasp, and Michael Douglas is brilliant as the original Ant-Man, Hank Pym. I was a bit worried that we weren't going to get another Ant-Man film, so when it was announced that Quantumania, it's a great title as well, was coming along, I was thrilled, because I just think that's the sort of wit and fun I like in these films. It's not constant gaggery and humour, but you've got a humorous character who gets into perilous situations and can crack a gag. And I think the visual effects are fantastic. Peyton Reed is brilliant. He's really got a feel for that character and how you capitalise on that thing of a shrunken man and a shrunken woman and the big things in the world that they're involved with. So I'm very much looking forward to that. I'm really pleased they're doing a third one, and if they're going to do a fourth one as well, I really wouldn't mind. And then the last one, more or less the last one, there's a little hint of something else, is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which is coming out in May 2023. Now, we've also had mention of a Guardians of the Galaxy holiday special, a Christmas special if you like, which is going to be Christmas 2012. Presumably that's going to be like an hour-long special thing, which is going to be on Disney Plus. That'll be fun. The more you get of these characters, the better. I think Guardians of the Galaxy are the prime example of characters who were real underdogs that nobody knew much about, and then that film came along a few years ago and just blew everyone away. And I remember seeing that. I was lucky enough to go to a screening in London for Starburst magazine, and this film started, and I think when that bit kicks in, the title comes up on the screen, this big, bold, unsubtle lettering, with that music behind it, and Chris Pratt doing his thing on the alien planet. I just thought, yeah, this is going to work, this is going to be fun. And it was fun, and it was exciting. I wasn't so fussed on the second one. I think that got a little bit bogged down too much in the stuff about Chris Pratt and ego, his father, played brilliantly by Kurt Russell, but it just felt like it was repeating the beats of the first one, but with less end results. So I'm hoping that the third one, and again, James Gunn is back after that little fallout he had with Marvel a couple of years ago. He's back directing this. And I'm really looking forward to that, because Chris Pratt's, again, such an enjoyable screen presence, and it's a good cast, and I'm very much looking forward to seeing what Volume 3 will bring. That sort of brought us to the end of the trailer, apart from that little teaser with the 4 symbol which came up towards the end, which of course was a plain sight hint of the Fantastic Four. We know that Marvel got the rights back to the Fantastic Four after the fairly disastrous previous versions that have come out, although I have to say that I quite enjoyed the ones that Tim Story did with Ewan Grufford as Mr. Fantastic, Chris Evans of course as the Human Torch, Michael Chiklis as the Thing, and Jessica Alba as the Invisible Girl. I thought those two films were good fun and quite watchable, but I understand that they weren't the Fantastic Four as Stan Lee envisaged them. The less we say about Josh Trank's fan four-stick, the better. It's a film that we should consign to the hell dustbin of history. So it is interesting that Marvel have pretty much said, yeah, we're doing the Fantastic Four. That's going to be somewhere in Phase 5, I assume. We know Blade is coming as well. But no, that was basically this trailer that we've seen on Monday, and it's thrilling stuff. And just what struck me, as I've said, that it was really a call to arms to say to people, get back to the cinema. It is safe. And watch these films where you need to see them. I think these are films that you have to watch on the big screen, which is why I'm so glad they didn't compromise with Black Widow, because that does look big and loud and spectacular. I don't want to see these characters on the small screen. I want to see them on the big screen first. I'm quite happy to get the Blu-rays and the 4Ks and watch them home, but I want to see them first in the cinema. And that's what this trailer was all about. Just saying to you, cinema is safe. Come back. We'll look after you and we'll entertain you. And it just looks as if Phase 4 is going to be such a ride. Whether it's the TV shows or the films or even the cartoons, like What If is an animated series. Bring it on. I'm up for it all. So that's my take on what's coming up on the MCU. Why don't you people out there, let me know what you think. Any particular things you're looking forward to, let me know in these comments bits below. What impressed you most about this trailer, and what you're most saving your pennies up for. And we'll have a right old chat about it. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm at 49 subscribers at the moment. Can I just remind you of my 50 by 50? Where I'm looking to get just 50 subscribers. I want to be at or above 50 subscribers by the time I have 50 posts on YouTube. And when I do, and if I do, I will pick out of a hat or other headgear the name of somebody who's put a comment. Anybody who's put a comment in any of my videos, unless they're one of my close friends, because obviously I couldn't do that. I'll just pick a name, and whoever I pick will win a prize or prizes up to the value of 50 big ones. How can you resist? So just subscribe, leave a comment, because you can't win just by subscribing. You got to leave a comment, and you could win something wonderful. Don't know what yet, but it'll be something wonderful. But you've got to be in it to win it. So join in the fun here at the World of Stuff. Let me know what you think about the Marvel trailer. And coming up soon here is finally part 2 of my ranking the Doctors from Doctor Who. I'm re-recording that on Friday, so I hope to get that up on the weekend. And anything else I can think to throw together. So I'll see you next time, but until then, keep taking the stuff.